Hello everyone, and welcome to our first tutorial. You guys voted for us to learn how to draw Infinite, basically. As you can see, we have Jello Cube Boy in the corner with his little Jello Cube. I don't know how well we're gonna do this, but you guys wanted a speed drawing thing, so we're gonna see how it works. So this part of the video is just the introduction where you basically get me having the intro, and so we will start doing what we do best here. Start drawing. So the first thing we're going to do is get the bean body, as I've done recently with Ace's body from our previous stream. The next thing I'm going to do is do the head, because you want to do the body first before you do the head. I put down the same guidelines as I did before when I was doing Ace, except this time I'm facing Infinite somewhat slightly forward. The next thing I do is kind of harden the body shape for him, and then I start doing the legs, following as close as I can to the thumbnail. Next thing I do is I get the shape of the foot, where I want it to go, which direction I want it to go in. These shoes were originally going to be Infinite shoes from like Sonic Forces, but I ended up changing it to TC shoes that I designed for him. I enlarge in the leg because it's a little bit too short for my taste, because he's kind of leaning down on one knee. The next thing I hopefully will get to is a little bit of the face. This is where I start drawing the muzzle going in a certain direction, which is forward. Because you want to have the muzzle facing the same direction as you have the body facing. I lower down the nose because naturally with dog characters within the Sonic community and canon, their snouts are a little bit downwards. I begin drawing the eyes as well as the scar that Infinite has. He has not a Cyclops face. Next thing I try to draw is basically the mouth. I draw a little tiny thumbnail to get a general idea. Granted, I try to move it over, but it looks really terrible, so I draw it from scratch. The next thing I do is I do the shape of his ears. Now with jackals, their ears are naturally a little bit longer than what you think. So you gotta give them a little bit of a big ears syndrome. Of course, they still have to be connected to the guidelines that you put for the head, because you want it to be his face. The next thing I start to do is his chest fur, because with Infinite, you want to have a general idea of where things are on his body, including his hands, as well as his little markings that he has below his chest fur. The next thing I basically try to do is harden the shape of the side of the body because he's a little too fat on top. So I kind of tried a little bit different things from the thumbnail. As well as including his tail, which is pretty long, since his tail is a little bit bigger. The next thing I do is the bottom of his hair. I don't do the top of his head because it's a little bit harder to do when you have the general top of the head and trying to do the bottom. And now on to my favorite part, is trying to figure out which direction the fingers are going. Yes, somewhat difficult to do considering that you'll figure out that I showed this there. Once that's done, I start to line it? No. Sorry, I'm voiceover now. I start to design the shoes that I did for him for PC. And the little symbols that I put on these little cufflinks of his shoes are basically the infinity symbol. Because it wouldn't be infinite without an infinity symbol, now would it? Granted, you know, this is going far from my general idea of doing his original shoes. With his PC shoes, he has a little bit more of heel than he does with his Sonic Forces shoes. Once that's done, I see a little problem once I get further in. The knee is a little too... well, I will fix it later on, but I start with the hands for line art. Since Infinite has little claws within Sonic Forces, he should have a little bit of nail showing for his gloves. Because no way does Infinite have little baby stubby nails. He a doggo, he needs them. The direction of his nails was a little bit hard to pinpoint, but it goes downward. Nails naturally go down at a curve. I will warn you, there are some pauses within me doing the lines via choosing a different song as well as doing other things. If you notice me unclipping the guideline part of what I have originally down, which is a rough sketch, it's mainly me checking to make sure I have everything line arted. I start on the other hand, which proves a little bit difficult for some of the nails facing a certain direction. And then start to do the palms as well as figuring out the base of his gloves. And then I do the fun part, which is line arting his chest fur. His chest fur is a little bit easier to mainly draw up. Granted, you know, fur goes in different directions. But you know, once you get used to it, you're able to know which direction to go. I end up doing the sideline of what I used for shortening his chest a little bit, because once I noticed the mistake of his chest being a little too big, I was like, okay, I need to line art that first. The next thing I do is line art his nose, which is probably the easiest thing to draw / line art within this piece. I usually start with the noses, coloring wise and such, mainly because that's the first thing I start with. His muzzle I followed along with slightly with the guidelines, but I also had to move some things because his face needed to be a little bit wider. In this piece, I didn't really draw or show his neck. I ended up like doing sketchy little lines for where a dark space would be. I also tried to redraw his mouth a little bit because he wasn't doing the expression I wanted. Teeth are a little bit harder to do if you're a beginner, because you know, animal canines and such go in similar direction. I also changed his eye shape a little bit. You can see me kind of being indecisive once I finish his opened eye, because I wanted to show somewhat of not an exactly angry expression, but relatively somewhat upset. Eyelashes are probably the easiest thing as well to do. As long as you have a little bit of white space to give a little bit of the shine, you're kind of set. It's okay Like, remember this, it's okay to not always follow the guidelines that you sketched out for yourself, because sometimes you have to go a little bit further for what you have. It doesn't have to be exact, like I'm showing right here with drawing his eyebrows and such. And then began to do his ears. Naturally, I give his ears a slight point tilting upwards or downwards, similar to like a large Chihuahua's ears if they were huge. His ears do prove sometimes difficult when you draw them, because you don't know how large you're supposed to go or not. When I was line arting here, I realized his arm was a little bit too long. So I ended up making his elbow a little bit shorter, cinched in. Because no way does Infinite have like a long human arm. He has no noodle arms in here. I then started on the next arm. Now the next arm is a little bit difficult for me, because eventually once I got to the coloring process of this piece, I noticed it was a little too slim. So I ended up fixing it within the coloring process before I got further in. Here you just see me struggling generally trying to connect the arm to the gloves. The next thing I do is line art the hair. Now with the hair, you can generally go in any direction, but with Infinite, he has somewhat flowy, kind of like, not really like a cloud, but long hair that kind of flows. Imagine if your hair was in water. It's going up, but this one's like going apart. Infinite's hair kind of moves a certain direction, which isn't really easy to pinpoint. But once you get it down, it helps. The next thing, which is really difficult, is his markings near his chest. They're a little bit difficult to do, depending on which direction to go. Similar with cuffs, I kind of struggled a little bit with this one. It wasn't always really good. I also had to fix his legs, not this one, but I had to fix one of his legs, the one with the long knee. This is where I realized his knee and leg would be too long within the final piece. If he was standing up straight, his left leg, the one that I'm currently trying to fix, would be way longer than his right. It'd be like lopsided. It'd be like that scene in Steven Universe with Amethyst having like one big body part and then one small, skinny noodly one. Legs are relatively difficult somewhat, so it helps to start with like a cylinder. I still wasn't too happy with the knee, but I got somewhat relatively close to what I wanted, while making minor changes to connect it to the crotch area as well as the rest of the leg. Once I got that, I started outlining his tail. That way I could draw the remaining pieces of his hair. Now the things I usually do when it comes to shading and stuff within hair and stuff, as well as like the cuffs, I do a little slight, not hatching, but it's like a shadow hatch, to where it gives a little bit more depth to the object or hair. Once I got his cufflinks done on his shoes, I started outlining his tail. His tail proved a little bit difficult. Granted, it's not always that hard to do, but it's hard to remember the counting of how much tuff he has. Shoes, if you think about it when you start designing them, think of them as a boat. That or like, the container for like, I can't believe it's not butter. It's similar to like Kleenex boxes, but with a sharp curve like a boat. Some details of TC Infinite shoes are a little bit simplistic, but I didn't want to do anything too complicated. This is one of the moments where I started somewhat shading to give a little more depth to the hair, as well as any other area I could find where it needed a little bit more of oomph. Some parts I didn't do such intensity to it because it would have delved the fact of the line art. I did them near the gloves, hair, tail, muzzle, and as well as his little cuff things on his shoes, I believe. Once that was done, I slightly fixed his eyelid because it looked a little weird without a little line there. The next thing I did was I started color. Now this is somewhat the part where I will stop talking, but I will say this. I used airbrush, a soft blurry brush, and I used a bit of blur for when I colored stuff. It helps to figure out which brushes you're comfortable with in order to figure out which type of shade or area you really want to go with. Once we reach the end of this video, I will be posting another poll for which one you want to see drawn next, and hopefully I'll be a little bit more easier with the talking. But besides that, I hope you enjoy the rest of the video, which is basically speed paint coloring. Peace out, and I hope you enjoy.
Air of darkness, but I never lose out.
The sun is falling in the sky beyond. that I see now is not the same. All you remember has gone away, but you're still standing here. So much has happened, it's hard to bear. Shadows of sadness within your stare, but still you're standing here. They're beyond, futures down the road, but the journey won't be easy. Rising up and standing on your own, with a beauty in your eyes shining. You have not lost a thing, whatever may come. The light of hope is always shining there in your heart. You've not lost a thing, whatever you do. Just know that your tomorrow will be waiting for you. Ever so precious, a vision shared, a future you promised. On that special day, still memories never fade. Friends of old, back from long ago, come again, just to say hello.